Story 1. Should have pre-approved my remote day due sickness? Okay. This happened in my old job and I was reminded it today. Thought it would fit here. In my old job we had a great boss and hybrid work. If we had any reason not to come to the office, just a message to him and extra remote day would be approved. Then he was let go, and we got a new boss who was exact opposite of her predecessor. This happened a few weeks after our old boss was let go and his boss became our new boss. One morning I wasn't feeling well. Too sick to travel to the office but not too sick to work from home. I had a couple of remote meetings with customers, so it was just easier to me to work while being a little sick than try to reschedule. I spoke with my boss in Slack, and our conversation was like this. Me. Good morning. I have a sore throat and a slight fever. I'll be working from home today, so no need to reschedule anything. Boss. Our employer handbook clearly states that remote days are Tuesday and Thursday and exceptions need a pre-approved by the manager. I was pissed. Is she really trying to force me to the office even I'm sick? Or what was her motive? But then it hit me it doesn't matter, and our discussion continued. Me. Oh, sorry, that's true. Me. I have a sore throat and a slight fever. I'm unable to come to the office, so I'm taking a sick day. Could you ask someone to reschedule the meetings with customer A and customer B, since I'm recovering at home at least for today? Me. The employer handbook states that I can take 3 sick days in a row without a doctor's note, but I'm willing to make an exception if you want to, and get you one. Do you want it? I was left on read for 10 minutes. She started typing, deleted the text, started again and deleted it again. She was active in our chat for entire 10 minutes until I finally got a response. Boss. No, that won't be necessary. I'll ask someone to reschedule those meetings. Get well soon. My colleagues almost died on laughter when I told them why I'm having a sick day and not just work from home. Our boss didn't like me after that, but the feeling was mutual. I left the company later for a new job, but not before she was fired. Edit. Formatting. Edit 2. Thank you so much for upvotes. Several people are asking for why she was fired. I wrote it in one comment, but I'll write a longer version here. She was commercial director. Last year before she joined the company, it made €606,000 profit. In her first year for €13K, second year €1K, and she was fired at the end of the third. Numbers aren't public yet, but they are similar to the last year, if they somehow managed to stay profitable at all. She had previous experience from companies over 20 times bigger than that, and she was hired to help the company grow to the next level. Unfortunately, her skills were just to implement heavy processes and stiff organizational model. Her commercial department had 7 people working under her, and there was 4 sub-departments: sales, productization, account management, and marketing. 4 in sales, 2 in productization, 1 in account management, and marketing was handled by an outside contractor. We had 26 employees in total. We in sales were completely in new business, and after we had a signed agreement, account management took the contact role. Our former boss was head of sales, and he suggested that salesperson could be the contact for the first year, or even handle possible upselling, selling more to the current customer. But the commercial director didn't even let him finish before said no. So the company lost a lot of money when not doing the upsell. It's pretty common that companies start with a small deal with a new software, and expand the use step by step. For some reason this wasn't an option if the customer didn't specifically ask us to provide more licenses. She was there before I was, but during my time she focused on standardizing the sales process, which led to us losing the sales and bringing in less money. For example, we couldn't modify text in proposals for the customers without asking a permission from productization, and even after that only marketing would be allowed to make changes. And this was even in situations where the customer didn't want some feature our product had. We couldn't even remove the text about it. I once counted that my proposal introduced 11 features, and 9 of them were completely irrelevant to the customer. 2 of them were something that the customer had explicitly stated that they didn't want those. This was a software, so it had some features customers didn't use, but they didn't affect the pricing, so it didn't matter. It led to situations where we heard from the customers that we focused in completely unrelated things, not those which were relevant to the customer, and their board chose another vendor, even if the internal champion believed we were much better. Which we said would happen before this new model was implemented. Some other standardizations lead to the situations where owners ask something for us to do something, and we had to decline since we weren't allowed to do that. They respected her role, even when they didn't agree with her decisions. But it's hard to believe that it didn't affect her termination. She costed about €2 million to the company, and that doesn't even include her salary. And for the top of that, she turned the company culture to something the owners didn't like. So she was expensive, difficult person, and hard to work with. Story 2. Make it so a person with zero knowledge could understand it? Okay. My previous workplace was an NGO hired me to do what was deemed an impossible task, reaching to and gaining the support of several groups that are notoriously difficult to recruit. It was a pretty critical point with over $1.2 million funding depending on it. Not to brag, but this is something I am actually expert in, one of very few in my country. I got to work and used some pretty unorthodox methods. Initially, management seemed to be fine with it, since it proved extremely effective. Within 8 months, the organization moved from being irrelevant at best to having a small army of volunteers, active groups, and vocal ambassadors, and gained a reputation for being the most radical and interesting player on the scene. The thing is, this success was because I was there to cover for the organization's irrelevance. As long as they don't implement some deeper changes, this is as good as it will get. Except nobody seemed very interested at implementing any deeper changes. In fact, they began doing increasingly more problematic stuff, think public racist comments by staff members, making it harder and harder to maintain the support. I kept raising the alarm that this will not end well, and at some point, this and my less-than-standard methods annoyed management enough that they decided to fire me. I pointed out to my manager that, if they don't want to lose all of the work, they'll at least have to recruit someone with similar experience, which is going to be very difficult to do. Again, very few experts on this. In response, my manager demanded that I write down a document for my future replacement, and, specifically, that I make it so a person with absolutely zero previous knowledge could understand it. Zero knowledge, you say? All right. I sat down and wrote an extensive document, which included nothing but the most obvious, basic, and offensively unhelpful information. No, you cannot call people a slur. No, not even when they aren't present. Phrased as if it was written for a third grader. If they hire someone competent, they won't need that document anyway. If they hire someone clueless, well, they'll probably be able to understand it. I ended my employment there in September, but stayed in touch with some of my former crew. By the end of November, half the volunteers I recruited dropped out. The 200-plus people involved in one of the flagship projects just stopped showing up. The assistance network stopped responding altogether. An attempt was made to continue one of the other long-running projects, but since they didn't know how or why it worked, it flopped gloriously and stopped running after one more session. The annual fundraiser I started failed to have any relevance when they attempted to copy it this December, and only 7 people showed up. 3 of the groups decided to exit and operate under a different host, after also going public about the management being both out of touch and abusive. As of today, it seems like they lost the $1.2 million funding, too. Story 3. Don't you respect my schedule? Okay. This happened a few days ago at my work. I work as a monitor in a company that sells wholesale. We have rotating schedules, so if we have activities outside of work, we have to notify them in advance so they can adjust our schedule. It turns out that this is not the first time that they have told me that I should give more notice. So a week before the next week's schedules were made, I informed my leader about all my activities for the month. He clearly didn't like this, so he told me to send it to him in writing so he could remember and consider it for the schedules. Well, if it had happened like that, I wouldn't be here. I needed to rest on a Sunday because that day I had baking classes and to come in the morning on Tuesday. When I saw the schedules, I got angry. As always, she did what she wanted. She gave me my rest on Tuesday, and on Sunday she left me in the afternoon, from 2:30 to 11 p.m. My baking class was from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., so it was literally making me choose between my class and coming to work. I was upset because it wasn't the first time it had happened, and I always ended up trying to convince other classmates to change my schedule or break so I could do my activities. I was tired of always looking for solutions for the things she did wrong, and she also had the impudence to take her rest on Sunday. Here comes my malicious fulfillment. I decided to pretend that I never saw the schedules and miss Sunday. I hate uploading statuses to my WhatsApp, but I decided that this time it was a special situation, so I started uploading statuses from my baking class, When I saw that my leader saw my status, I knew that I had won. When it was 3 in the afternoon, my boss, my leader's superior, asked me why I had been absent. I told her that I had not seen the schedules and that since I did what the leader asked me to do, which was to notify her in time and sending him my schedules in writing, I assumed that he had respected it. I knew that I was going to ask my leader, but I also know that she has a reputation as a liar, so I knew that she would try to twist things in her favor. So I sent her a screenshot of the conversation in which I told her in detail about my activities. She thanked me and didn't say anything to me. The next day I found out that she was advised for that and I got away with it without any repercussions. Then she tried to justify herself to me by saying that my boss had not approved the schedule. But it is evident that is a lie. I know they're not going to pay me that day I was absent. But it was worth it to get her scolded, and let's see if she understands that if they don't respect my schedule, I'm just going to be absent and I'm not going to try to fix their nonsense anymore. Edit. For those who are wondering what happened next, I did not have any retaliation. That day I received a message from the manager of my area. She is above my leader. Wondering why I missed work, I told her that I didn't know that I should work because I had already spoken with the leader, and I also told her that I had sent it to her in writing as she had requested, and I attached the evidence. The next day I found out that the leader was reprimanded by my area manager for not paying attention to those details, and now my manager is in charge of talking to her whenever I need a specific time so that my free time is respected. Story 4. You want to review every single candidate? You got it. Babe, this is the best time that my warnings went unheeded and made the client regret ever asking. I worked in recruitment for 9 years, and a few years back I had a new client, hiring manager, and she didn't like abiding by the rules set up for the recruitment team. For one thing, we review the applicants, interview the best qualified candidates, and then submitted them to the hiring manager for consideration. Well, this hiring manager couldn't understand why we only sent over 3 candidates in a week. Honestly, she's lucky as some positions did not garner that many applicants. I explained that we submit 3 candidates for every 1 position available. This ensures that the hiring manager's time was considered when scheduling next step interviews. This wasn't just a standard I set, it was approved by her company's TA bosses, and frankly was standard at another place I used to work as well. Hiring manager. That is absurd. I want to review all of the candidates so I can tell you whom to pre-screen and then you schedule their interview with me based on my availability. Me. But, ma'am, you have almost 100 applicants that met your minimum qualifications. I don't think you really want to devote that much time to reviewing all of these resumes, and honestly, some of them were not great. Hiring manager. Are you not listening? Send them all over to me and I'll take care of it. Me. Yes, ma'am. You got it. I'll send those over right away. I wrote an email to the hiring manager immediately after the call, restating the topics discussed by phone and asked, again, if she was certain she wanted all of the candidates sent to her. She confirmed. I complied and forwarded to my boss with an explanation that she will take care of reviewing all applicants and my numbers were going to be skewed for the month. I did as requested, selecting nearly 100 candidates in the system and moved them to hiring manager review. Now, what this did was send individual emails for each candidate as an update to the hiring manager, and it would ping her email every 3 days that they weren't reviewed. Smiley face. I smirked, knowing what was about to happen and my rear was going to get chewed out in about a week. But it felt really good because I knew I was right. 2 days later, my boss calls and says he got an irritating phone call from this hiring manager who said she never requested this. To which they responded with the information detailed in my email. She was speechless. He let her know that I would go back into the system and back up the candidate process so it would be taken out of her to-do list and I would continue to send over candidates that were the best fit for the role as described in our processes. I never received pushback from that hiring manager ever again. Comment 1. Non-specialized recruiters may be personally pleasant, but they know nothing and that makes them a menace. Without malice but also without knowledge, they can't make intelligent assessments, so they inevitably reject actually qualified applicants and forward actually worthless ones, fucking over applicants and clients alike. The whole thing is thoroughly broken and disreputable. If I ever have the slightest bit of power to impose this, resumes will be reviewed solely and without filtering by people who do or at least know the jobs being applied for. In OP's scenario, the hiring manager was correct, and the thing that bit her wasn't being right or wrong, it was the ludicrously overzealous CRM system. To be clear, it is not recruiters per se who are the problem, or even generalist recruiters in specialist fields. The problem is the alienation of recruitment from the actual work. It's abstraction to people who don't understand the actual work. This can also happen in other ways. In a previous position, the institution performed a two-tier hiring process for each position. An ad hoc hiring committee reviewed candidates and forwarded those they liked to the department. We needed to recruit a relatively specialist person for a position. The hiring committee included no one from the specialist department. Unsurprisingly, they failed and no one was hired. Were there qualified applicants? We will never know. That was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard until the current boom of non-specialized recruiters doing basically the same thing. If you don't know the specialist position, or at least field, on what criteria are you supposed to judge? That you like the font they used on their resume? That they check a box saying they went to school for something that sounds, to you, like it's basically the same thing? That they meet diversity quotas? This is insane. Comment 2. Yup. And even when you have the experience, the skills, and the best of intentions, and you have perfect communication with the client and understand deeply what they want, there's no guarantee that candidate information will include what you're looking for. There's never been a perfectly clear method for applicants to communicate exactly what a client or recruiter is looking for. Every person in a hiring process, I found, has a different idea, often very different, of what the perfect application or CV format/rubric is, and applicants are simply supposed to be telepathic and know what's wanted. Applicants simply don't have the depth of HR knowledge or the job or employer, much less the people who will be doing the filtering, that's really needed to focus their application perfectly. And there are 500 clashing employers expect this format in an application articles on the internet, most of which are outdated or don't apply to a specific job/employer/industry/situation for reasons that aren't immediately clear. One of these days, I'll convince the hiring industry to include application formats or expectations in their processes. But today is not that day.